Hey everyone, welcome to Slicks and Rain, your go-to source for everything F1. It's race weekend in Melbourne, and we just witnessed an absolute thriller in qualifying for the 2025 Australian Grand Prix. I'm Harsha, joined by my co-host Aditya, and we have a lot to break down.
That's right, mate. This session had everything. Perfect laps, runoffs, and a McLaren front row. So before getting started, let me just give you a quick introduction about ourselves. So we are computer science students from Kerala, India, and huge Formula One enthusiasts. I'm Aditya Sriram, and I support Fernando Alonso, and I'm joined by Harsha, and he supports. Who do you
Lewis
support?
Hamilton.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, hi. Uh, so, Harsha, before getting started and talking about the quali of the Australian GP session, do you want to talk about the 24 season?
Yeah. What do you think about the 2024 season, Ad?
So, 24 season, I think it's been great. Since the turbo hybrid era started in 2014, we have never seen these many number of race winners in a single season. That too from different teams, different drivers, and they're all winning races, and it was amazing. So, in a F1 fan point of view, I think it's been really great. There have been a lot of great moments, like home drivers winning in their home GPs, like Lewis Hamilton at Silverstone and Charles Leclerc in Monaco, and as well as there have been some amazing individual performances like Max Verstappen's Brazilian GP from P17, the way he recovered after a bad quali session, the way he won the title there. I don't think he won the title there, but still, I think that's the race which he used to prove that he used it to prove that a four-time world champion material. Yeah. And then, as I said previously, that I'm a Fernando Alonso fan. In that perspective, it hasn't been, a good season because, like the team and the driver both underperformed. Personally, I think Alonso, he gave everything and he did everything, but the car was just underperforming and I mean, all the updates and upgrades which they bought to every GP, they haven't added anything, but they were only useful in just underperforming the car even worse. So yeah, that's my take. But what do you think? How was it? How was the 21st season for you?
Personally, last season it was great to watch because like after 2021, it kind of become monotonous to see Max winning because all of the other teams and drivers were underperforming. But last season was great because we got to see many multiple race winners, and then two of the drivers they got their first wins, Lando and uh, Piastri. Being Hamilton fan, it was great to see Hamilton winning at the Silverstone Grand Prix because it was Hamilton's win after probably like 3 years or something. So it was like great. And then Charles, we had multiple race winners last time, so it was kind of not monotonous. So it was pretty good. And also we had some fun moments like always, like when Charles was sent out in slicks during rain in Canada, the title of this podcast, and then yeah, Stroll crashing out in Brazil in the formation lap. So there were pretty fun moments in the Grand Prix last year, and it was great. So, and who do you think as the worst and the best racer and the constructor last season?
Okay, so if I had to rate, then first talking about the constructors, I would say McLaren are the clear winners. The car development was so good and they kept the team together even though they have two amazing drivers in the likes of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. They did everything to make sure that both of the drivers are at least satisfied from their results and the car. And yeah, they really kept the team together because whenever we have this kind of situation, like when you have two top drivers, like say 2007, Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. Even though both of them were performing really good, uh, just they can only be one champion, and both of the drivers want to be that guy. And in this case, McLaren they made it clear that Lando Norris is the number one driver, even though they're giving their full support to Oscar in each and every part of the race. And the way they dealt with this situation was really good. And talking about the car development also, they gave both of their drivers the cars which suits their driving style, and they are also uh, I think I can say they are the quickest in the whole of last season. So I think McLaren has been the best constructors. And talking about the worst, I don't know, maybe Aston. Yeah, maybe. Because the way they started their season, the way they started their 23 season, from that point, the downfall has been really bad. I mean, first they were competing for podiums and then they were competing for points. And after that, last season they reached to a point where they asked Fernando to just make another pit stop for sauce and go try for the fastest lap because they can't get points in any other way. So, yeah. And one of the main reasons I think I chose Aston as the worst constructors last season is that they had no idea what was going on with the car. They have no
Mhm.
idea. Like, they're just bringing updates to every race, week in, week out. There are like a dozen updates they're bringing. That only made the car least reliable and less competitive. So I think that was pretty lazy from Aston from last season. So I
I
think,
think if I'm not wrong, that's what happened with Mercedes at some point, I guess.
yeah,
They were continuously bringing upgrades for Hamilton, but then nothing seemed to be working out. But then one mail or something, I don't know what changed, but then suddenly Mercedes was fast enough to win races and then bag podiums. But then, like, yeah, I think for Aston and some other teams too, they got the car development pretty wrong.
yeah. Yeah, and as a team, you should always understand what's going on with your car. Doesn't matter if it's fast or slow, but you have to understand it. That's the first thing, and I think they're going to rectify that issue this season because they've got the best aerodynamic engineer the sport has ever seen, and also the best power unit engineer in the recent years. So I think they might rectify that issue in this season or at least for the next season when the regulations are going to change. And talking about the drivers, I think we can all agree that Max was the best driver last season. Don't you think he is?
He was, but like, what surprised you the most? But Max was the thing was it was kind of monotonous with Max. So he was winning races and he won races last season. So
Yeah, but
it was kind of obvious.
yeah. No, but the thing is, he was not winning races in the fastest car because since the since the ground effect era started, Red Bull they just took the lead in constructor championship every season, and they were on top
Mhm.
because honestly they got adrenaline. And then so Max didn't have to put his 100% in each and every race to just win it because uh, he would just qualify first and then first lap, second lap. At the end of the second lap, he's just in a league of his own. Until last season, there was the same story. At
Mhm.
21, when he first won the championship, Red Bull has always been the second and first fastest car. And then 22 and 23 were just straight up boring, if I can say. But 24 season, he didn't have it that easy compared to his last three championships.
Yeah, we could really see the performance difference last year by comparing it to
Yeah,
Checo's performance.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
like, yeah, Checo was way too down below if the car like if you like compare it with Max. So we could say it was really Max's talent and hard work which put Red Bull like up in the constructor championship competition. Like if you observe more than 75% of the points that were scored for Red Bull were of Max.
Max. And I think this is the first time we saw Max extracting each and every microsecond out of the car. He was just pushing the car so hard in the qualifying in the race. That's some kind of stuff which people complain Max has never did because he had it in the easy way. Although I don't believe it because Max used to be the same driver, used to be the good driver even when Red Bull wasn't dominant since his
Mhm.
debut in 2016. So yeah, I think Max was the best driver of last season. Although I would say Oscar was impressive, and then Lando, apart from his race starts and his the way he lost positions in the start of the race. I would say he was also good because his qualifying performance was just extraordinary. And then even, there were some moments like in Singapore where he almost bottled his 30 or so second lead, but still he recovered from it and then he won the race. So those kinds of performances were good, especially from Lando, who always had it very hard to, convert his rest like he would do in the previous seasons from 23 and the previous other seasons. So yeah, Charles was also very impressive, and Oscar, you had this. You're clearly told your face that you're the second driver, and you had to cooperate uh, so that your teammate can win the drivers' championship. And a lot of people won't take it in a good way, and that might affect their performances, but not in Oscar's case. So yeah, he showed a very mature mentality, and the way he performed is really great. So I would say, if I had to rank, I would say Max and then Charles and then Oscar and Lando. They are my top four. And worst, isn't it obvious? Isn't it Lance Stroll? Is it not?
So let's moving on to the current season.
Okay.
Albert Park.
Before going, who do you rate as the best and worst?
So, in my opinion, yeah, Max was pretty great last time, but even if I'm a little bit biased towards Mercedes since Hamilton was there, I'd rank Max and Lando partially as the best drivers since Lando tried to make the best use of the car that he was handed. Like McLaren was pretty good. They improved great over many weekends. They brought in good upgrades. But then sometimes I feel like Lando could be better. But then if I had to give the first spot, then I'd give it to Verstappen since the car wasn't great, but he tried to extract. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Verstappen was really good last time. But then Lando, I felt like after the summer break and after McLaren started getting faster and he started getting poles, I think Lando became a little bit arrogant. Yeah, it was pretty much evident because he kept on bottling the races. He would give away the position in the first turn, but then he started dive bombing and then he started blaming it on other people. But then it was okay. He kind of made good use of the car, but he could have done better. They were my top two. Coming to the constructors, I think I don't know. Everyone they underperformed, but then McLaren was great because since it
Yeah.
had two good drivers driving for them. In the case of Red Bull, it was only Max pulling it. It was the
If,
same for Mercedes and Aston Martin.
if I can add, if I can add, I think either Haas or Alpine. I mean, the way they recovered after the summer break and the way they finished way higher than you expect them to be, I think
Mm-hmm.
that was really good. So yeah, Alpine after Flavio Briatore entered the picture, I think they performed really well. Even they got a double podium on Brazil.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
Brazil, double podium was like completely unexpected.
It was totally unexpected. Yeah.
And then even Haas, they use both of their experienced drivers, Nico and Magnussen, to their extreme. And then, the way they performed in the second half of the season, I think it was good.
Magnussen was pretty good. It was some races, it was very unexpected. Magnussen coming out of the blue and hitting fastest laps or overtaking cars. Magnussen was awesome.
So Alpine and Haas, either one of those teams should be there in the second place, I guess, because the
Hmm.
rest of the teams who are leading in the constructors, most of their points were a reflection of their drivers' hard work rather than the way they develop the car, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah. So, Aditya, what do you think about the circuit?
Yeah, Swallow Park. I love it. It has been a Formula One season opener for a long time before Barron took over. And now we're again going back to Albert Park. So, yeah, I think the circuit is pretty tricky because it's got a lot of slow corners and there's this turn six where a lot of drivers have crashed previously. Taking a look at the track, so it has a total of 14 corners, out of which most of them are slow. They are like a very heavy braking corners. And then there are two DRS detection zones and four DRS activation zones. And I would say that the track, it's of around 5 kilometers of length. Yeah, it's a pretty fast track. Normally, the lap time which you would see is like around 1 minute 15 seconds or so. And yeah, I think it's a pretty good track overall. And taking it some of the stats around the track, there are currently five race winners who are on the grid. Lewis Hamilton, who's a two-time winner here and also an eight-time pole sitter. Apart from him, there's Fernando Alonso, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, and Valtteri Bottas, the reserve driver, but obviously, yeah, he's also one of the race winners who won in 2019 around here. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's a good track.
Yeah, but we've been hearing complaints from drivers that the track is too hot. According to the data, the temperatures on the track reach 40 degrees Celsius, I guess. So we were hearing complaints from the drivers saying that the tires are getting heated, and there's very less grip on the tires. What do you think about this?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this issue has been there not only in Australia but even in Qatar, maybe a couple of seasons back. If you remember, like the drivers were like completely exhausted
Yeah, yeah.
night race. So yeah, talking about the tires, this season Pirelli have changed their C4 and C5 compound tires, so they should perform well than what they were performing in the previous seasons. So I think Pirelli almost tried to address this issue with their change in the C4 C5 compound tires. So I think that's the way FIA responded to the drivers' complaints or the tire manufacturer did, and I think it should work properly this season compared to the last seasons.
Okay. So coming back to the 2025 season, were you surprised to see the McLaren locking out the front row in today's qualifying session?
No, not at all, because the way they ended last season, they were on their absolute best, and they were completely destroying each and every other team. And when you even at the preseason testing in Bahrain, they were performing really good, and also there were claims that they were sandbagging and they were keeping a lot of things very secretive. So yeah, the expectations were really high because of the way they ended last season and the way they performed in the preseason testing. And if you remember, there were clips on social media all over saying it just shows how easily Lando Norris is handling the car, the way he's smoothly moving from the one part of the corner to the other without sliding or anything. Watching all those, I think the expectations for McLaren were high in for me, and then they completely performed to the way I expected them to perform. Front row lockup was no surprise for me. And what do you think? Were you surprised by McLaren's performance? Were you surprised by McLaren's performance?
Probably not because, McLaren, they have been the crowd favorite and they were the fastest last season. They ended the last season on high. So it was kind of expected because they were sandbagging their results and, they had a very good free practice result. So I think it was kind of expected, but I thought Max would be on top after seeing his Q2 and Q3 performance because he was flying, he was off the charts. He had all the purple sectors, but then it was very less, I guess, the gap. So
So Max
it was
was
a
Max was closer to both the McLarens in first and second sectors, but McLaren were on a league of their own when it comes to the
came to
third
the
sector.
third
They were
sector.
like
Yeah, yeah.
completely dominant. The car was so good, and yeah, McLaren was really good. Okay, so Harsha, what do you make of all the rookie performance in the qualifying session? So just to give a little bit of context, Isaac Hajar, he finished P11. Duhan was on P14. Borleto was on P15. Was Kimi Antonelli, who suffered some technical issues with his floor floor of the car. And then Lawson was P18. And then Ollie, he didn't even start the qualifying. was unbeaten. So yeah, what do you make of all this performance?
So I think the rookies they had a mixed day in qualifying. Some of them showed very great potential, putting in strong lap times. Uh, they were well to challenge Albert Park, while others struggled to find consistency. Bortoleto he did pretty good at kick. He outperformed Hulkenberg. That wasn't expected, but then it was great. I thought Kimi Antonelli would come out on top to Q3 after looking at his performance, but I think he had some issue with his floorboard, so that slowed him down in the lap. But without that, I think he would have easily made it to P7 or P8. So that was that. And the rookies, they were great. Like, it's not a bad start qualifying P11, P14, or P15, but then they'll get used to it. It's okay.
Yeah,
And moving on, Aditya, Ferrari looked off pace with Leclerc in P7 and Hamilton in P8.
uh,
Do you think this was a setup issue or actual lack of performance?
so, firstly, the team and the drivers, they were having a lot of pressure on themselves. So they find themselves in a very hard position. And, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, they are like completely different kind of drivers when it comes to their driving style because Hamilton prefers a lot of like comparatively Hamilton prefers understeer and then Charles need a lot of oversteer in his car. So when you're having two different type of drivers with different driving styles in your team, it'll just be a bit different for you to find a proper setup for each of the drivers, and also it would also affect the performance of the car. So I think it's just a bit of a issue with the car setup, and I don't think it's any huge issue for them for Ferrari because I think they'll sort it out. Yeah, and then Harsha, Verstappen was really strong at the end of the third. So do you think is Red Bull struggling and Verstappen's the one who's you know pushing the car to its extreme levels, or do you think it's just teammates who are underperforming and people are just making it wrong out of Red Bull's performance? What do you think?
So this is something similar to what happened in the last season. If we look at last season, it
Yeah,
was Max extracting everything from the car, and it was like kind of looked like it was only Max who was performing in the race.
yeah,
But then after looking at the qualifying session today, I think that was the case here as well. Because if Lawson had a really good car, he could have made it to at least Q2. But him getting washed out in Q3 maybe was a car issue. Or maybe it's because he's a rookie and this is probably his first time driving at Albert Park. So
yeah,
I think that might be the case. We will only know this after 1-2 Grand Prix.
yeah,
But then the Red Bull looks strong though. After looking at Max's flying laps from Q2 and Q3, I think Red Bull lies somewhere between the second and third fastest car.
yeah. So
And
it's
what are
too
your
early.
predictions? Yeah,
Yeah. So
it's
I
it's
think
too early to judge, I guess.
too early to judge. Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think if things go at the same pace as how things are going with all the teams and the drivers? Or what are your predictions after the summer break? What team comes up to the top, or what stays in the middle field?
Yeah. I would say that McLaren would definitely, and they should be on the top, given how good the car is, and how good the drivers are. So apart from McLaren, I think talking with the constructors, I think it's first McLaren and second Ferrari because the car obviously it's having some issues, and Leclerc had to abort his final lap in Q3. But I think they'll figure it out, and because they're also having a very strong drivers lineup, I think Ferrari should be there in the second. And when it comes to the drivers, I think the first place would be a fight. It would be a three-way fight between Charles. Charles should be there. Charles, Max, and then Lando. So three of them are like the you know first choice drivers for their team. First choice drivers for their team. And I mean, no offense to Davis, but still, he's a new driver in a very different team, and it's a
Yeah,
complete environment for him, going to an Italian side when there are like the nine, eight British teams on the grid, seven probably. Yeah. seven British teams. So yeah, I would say I think Lewis needs some time to adapt to the Ferrari environment, the culture, and I think it would be Charles who's leading Ferrari at least until the summer break. So yeah, I think it would be a three-way fight between Max, Lando, and Charles. Yeah.
Don't you think Oscar would be in the uh, competition?
Yeah, I mean, Oscar's a really good driver, but Lando is a better qualifier than Oscar, like in general, in most of the tracks, because Lando have had a good experience. He has in all of the tracks in the current calendar, he drove there at least once, and yeah, he has a pretty good experience. So I think experience would make a difference between the two McLaren. Who do you think is the driver impress you the most in this qualification today?
I think it was Yuki Tsunoda and Albon because I wasn't
Yeah,
expecting them to pull out a last minute thing in the qualifying today. But then I'm very much impressed with how Williams had improved over the few years, especially after Sainz moving back. No, moving to Williams. I think they've gained a very good, grip over the car, and then it's impressive how they made it to Q3 because
yeah,
before 1, 2 years, if we saw William making it to Q3, it would be a huge thing. But then this thing, it seems normal with Carlos on the team and then the changes they've made and the development. And then it was great to see Yuki coming to Q3 as well. But then,
yeah. After
yeah,
all the controversy in the Red Bull team,
yeah.
I think he gave Helmut Marko a pretty solid answer, in my opinion. Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, how do you think the battle at the front will play out tomorrow between Norris, Piastri, and Verstappen? Because Norris is on his provisional pole, but then we've seen him bottle the races over the past few Grand Prix.
Yeah.
So how do you think it will play out after turn 1 or turn 2?
I won't be that sure in like completely writing off Norris, but it's more like Verstappen is on P3, and out of the three drivers, Norris, Piastri, and Verstappen, he's the best starter. He's the best race starter in the first five places, obviously. And then I think Piastri is the second, and
Hmm.
Norris would face a lot of pressure from both of the drivers, like from Piastri and Verstappen. But I think, yeah, maybe Piastri and Verstappen going to gain places, in my opinion, before they would opt for a tire change. Yeah. So, yeah, Harsha, if it rains tomorrow, which team do you think would perform the most, and who do you think will get the best out of it?
So I think if it rains tomorrow, by looking at the weather at Melbourne, I think it probably would rain tomorrow, right? So I think if it rains
Probably,
tomorrow, it'll come down to the driver, not the car. Probably the one with the more experience in this track and the skill to drive in the rain. I think Hamilton, Alonso, and Max they would have an upper hand over all the drivers since Hamilton holds 8 pole positions and 2 wins. Also, Alonso has 2 wins in the circuit. So I think they know the track better than anyone. And since we have 6 rookies on the track, so
it would.
it would.
Because of chaos. I mean, they can't help it, but that's what's going to happen. Six rupees plus lunch. So we have to
After
see.
looking at the qualifying session, I think people were they had some hard time controlling the cars in turn 6 and 7.
Yeah,
So if it rains, I think that would be even more difficult
yeah,
with the wet track. So I think there would probably be at least 1 to 2 yellow to red flags in the race tomorrow, and it would primarily come down to skill of driving in the rain
yeah.
if it rains.
Because, as Tanna said, like when it rains, all the cars should be on the same level. Like it's on the driver.
Yeah, yeah.
You
The
know,
playing ground it gets
yeah.
level, so it basically comes down to skill.
And the ones with the most experience, Fernando and the Lewis, they might uh, have a lot of benefit. And then there's also Max, who's exceptionally good in the wet conditions. So yeah, those three would probably the drivers who would have the most benefit. Yeah, but teams, in terms of teams, which teams do you think would get?
If it rains tomorrow, since McLaren is in the front row, I think if they play the cards well and then they don't mess up anything, I think it would be pretty great for them.
Yeah.
since they already have an advantage of being at the front.
Yeah.
And Russell and Verstappen, they're all alone by themselves. So there's no point talking about constructors for Mercedes or Red Bull. So since Hamilton and Leclerc are in Ferrari and they have a pretty decent experience in driving in rain and with the circuit, I think the most uh, that the team that would most benefit out of this would be McLaren, and probably next would be Ferrari if it rains too much.
They just had to get their setup right, especially Ferrari,
Mhm.
because after the issues they faced in today's session, yeah, they probably should. And yeah, Harsha,
I really don't hope. I really hope that they don't put Hamilton or Leclerc on slicks tomorrow in rains like they did in Canada. If they get the strategy right and they don't mess things up, I think there's a good chance for Ferrari as well.
hopefully they won't copy our title, our podcast title. Yeah. Okay, so Harsha, here's a question. So the second row for tomorrow's grid, there's Verstappen, and then there's obviously George Russell. So there's a lot of speed between both of the drivers in recent days, especially after the season concluded last in 2024. So how do you think it's going to be?
I think having Max at P3, it's a dangerous thing when you're at P1 or P2.
Yeah, yeah.
Max is gonna like try his best to gain that position in the first turn or in the second turn. So Max would be totally focused upon getting that place, like uh, by any means, even if he has to dive bomb or something. So like I think the tensions won't matter that much when you're on the track. Russell would also like give a fair competition to Verstappen in the first turn since the side next to each other. It would be a great start to see tomorrow, the front row. And what are your race predictions for tomorrow?
Race predictions, I would say, McLaren would be the highest scoring team overall. But I think Max, or even if it rains, Charles or Lewis would have a chance of winning the race. Because in case of Lewis, Hamilton, he has this experience, and obviously he's the best driver on the grid to ever drive on Albert Park. Yeah. And then there's Charles. Yeah, I mean, he over the last season, he proved that he's a really a good and reliable driver. uh, so yeah, Charles is there and Max, yeah, every second he would be looking for an opportunity. And last season both of the McLaren drivers have had their fair share of errors. So I think in first place I would say Max would win, but if not, then I would say either Lando or Charles. Yeah. But yeah, we cannot also write off the home favorite Oscar, who's looking in a really, really good shape. And yeah, so yeah, finally, I would say Max, and if not Max, then Lando or Oscar. Yeah. What do you think?
Since Max is at P3, it would be very much easier for him to overtake the McLarens.
Yeah.
So I think if it rains, I'll probably bet my money on Hamilton. But if it doesn't, then it probably would be Max.
Yeah.
And the constructors part, McLaren would probably score more points since they're in the front row. Aditya, what do you think? Could we see a surprise podium, maybe from Sunoda or Albon? Do you think they could sneak in a podium or,
This one I don't think so, but podium it's possible. It's possible. Someone in the front two rows might have to mess it up completely, crash or a tactical error, so that the both of the midfield teams can just go up front. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's a possibility, but I think it's too early to expect too much from Williams and Red Bull Racing Bulls. So I mean, both of the teams' performance was really good in today's quali session, but I don't know on a long run how they're going to perform. I would probably say that it's a 50-50. But out of the two drivers, I would say Sunoda is having a better chance of ending up on a podium or even
I think it
closer.
fundamentally comes down to whether it rains or not tomorrow.
Yeah, it does also. And also, it's not only to gain places of the grid for Sunoda and Albon, because they also have to help both Lewis and Charles. and I think it would be a very tricky job
Tough
for
job
them.
to do.
Yeah, yeah. Because Hamilton, his like he always has been the most competitive driver on the grid, and Charles, he's also going to give his 100%. So I think so. What midfield teams should do when they are on a position uh, higher than which they expected to be, they would just try to hold the place and instead of trying to do some heroics. I think both of the teams are going to just try to finish closer to where they started.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on our social media handles for live updates and reactions during the races. We'll
Yeah,
see you next time for the race debrief. Enjoy the race, and we'll catch you soon.
yeah. Okay, bye. Bye.